just waiting for the sun to peep up over the eastern horizon. And while we do that, let me introduce myself. My name is James Henry. On camera today, we've got Andrew, who's wearing a jersey, despite the fact that later today it is probably going to be 39 to 40 degrees centigrade, which will be well up above the 100-degree Fahrenheit mark. On the other vehicle, appropriately for Valentine's Day, we have the lovers, Brent and Jamie. Brent is on camera again because I'm afraid Brian is a little under the weather today. And then in the final control, of course, we have got Kirsten and Jerry on her final stint for this particular work cycle. She's going back to Johannesburg, poor lady, today, and Leanne will be coming in to replace her. Right, so the plan this morning is to sit here for a little while, appreciate the glory of this lovely morning, and then we're going to head up towards Sydney's Dam, see if there's anything going on there, and then probably head across west to Arathusa. Towards the sun there is where Brent and Jamie have gone. They are heading east to see if they can find tracks perhaps of Tingana or Karula coming across. And that's the general plan for the morning. So now, if you will forgive me, I'm going to ask you to be very silent for the next 15 seconds, and let's listen to what we can hear in the dawn light. Right, so the things that we can hear are fairly typical for this time of the morning, especially a waterless time of the morning like this. We've got doves calling, obviously. The odd oxpecker taking off, going to look for some antelope to sit on so that they can eat up the ticks that they will be providing. And then we also have, Andrew, can you see in the distance there? I don't know if you can see it. I can just see Brent and Jamie driving along the cheetah cut line. I can see their light flashing. There we go. There they are. They're on their way to the far east. That's really nice, quite cool to see. That's the blinding white light of the front of Jigger, and they'll be staring at the road, hoping to find some tracks while they go. There's the odd grey-headed sparrow calling. And that's about it, really. Not much else going on, except for that glorious sky that is about to come up. Apparently Jamie has spotted us as well, which is wonderful. And what I'm going to do now is just quickly stick my tripod out of the car. It has a GoPro camera on it, and I'm going to leave it here to film the sun as it comes up. And we'll carry on and see what animals we can find in the meantime. That should get me a rough approximation. These things are remarkable. Time lapse, go. Just hope that no one thieving comes past here and takes it from us. Right, off we go. So we are going to go past Sydney's Dam. I just want to go quickly down here. I did hear a ground hornbill calling earlier on. We were sitting on quarantine clearings, having a bit of a listen, and there was that single ground hornbill that we saw yesterday, a male, and normally in the morning when they start calling, you hear the males going, or the females going, poo, poo, and then you hear the males going, bo, 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 and the females going, poo, poo, and the males going, bo, 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 bo. But this one is just a sad, lonely, bo, 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 bo. He's somewhere around here. So let's see if we can't spot him quickly before we go and look for the big and hairies, as they say. And thank you very much for all of you for your kind Valentine's Day wishes for all the crew. It's very kind of you. We hope that you, too, have a marvelous Valentine's Day, whatever it happens to mean to you. I know that for many who are not in the throes of a new love, Valentine's Day, can be something of a commercial pain in the bum. But maybe you can call it Friendship Day instead. For I believe Saint Valentine was not only the patron saint of lovers. Certainly, I remember when I lived in Johannesburg, by the time the day after Valentine's Day came along, the sight of a little red chocolate heart would leave me very cold indeed, and indeed possibly nauseous. Mercifully, we've had none of that out here. Just a beautiful dawn. Donna, you've seen me taking the odd photograph, obviously, and you want to know if I ever take pictures of birds. Donna, in order to take pictures of birds, you need to have a very large lens indeed. Brent is blessed of such a lens. My lens is very short, and it is much more suited to taking landscape stuff. So, no, I don't take pictures of birds. Unless one sat right over here, it would almost be pointless. So, no, not too many birds for me. Someone with a lens like Brent Leo Smith's, or indeed Andrew's got a big lens too. Then you can take nice bird pictures. I think let's head across on that note to Brent and Jamie, see what they're up to for the morning. Give them my fondest Valentine's wishes, would you? And I will see you shortly.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our chilly and gloomy sunrise safari. As James has already mentioned, I'm fortunate enough to have Mr. Brent Leo Smith on camera with me this morning, once again proving his multi-talented abilities. Now, I know that James explained to you that I'm headed across to the southeastern corner of Djuma to check for any sign of Tingana, a big male leopard that roams around this area. He was on a waterbuck or baby waterbuck kill yesterday, but he'd finished it off from the reports that we received from the guides. I wanted to see if maybe he was going to wander on up into Djuma. Now, there's no tracks coming through. I suspect, or one of the possibilities of what he might have done, Karula was on Torchwood yesterday, also with a baby waterbuck. The waterbuck are falling prey to the leopards around here at the rate of knots. She was busy finishing that off yesterday afternoon, and I have a suspicion, not necessarily correct, but in the true spirit of Valentine's Day, that Tingana might have wandered across to join Karula, and by join and share, what I actually mean is quite possibly appropriate her kill and take it for himself. Not all that uncommon with leopards. That is a distinct possibility. I'm wandering across along the eastern boundary just to double check and see if she's decided, or either of them have decided to cross back into Djuma from here. So far, the only tracks I've seen, though, have been elephant, hyena, and zebra. That's what's been wandering up and down Cheetah Cut Line sometime last night. And speaking of waterbuck, oh, look at that. There's one surviving waterbuck youngster wandering through with its mum. Two waterbuck crossing back into Torchwood. Where's that little baby gone? It just dashed out of view behind the bushes. It's definitely waterbuck calving time. Oh, here we go. Here's the little one. Just a couple of weeks old. Let's have a look. Let's see if we can creep forward and have a look. Probably get rid of my vehicle lights now. Morning, waterbuck. They love this area. It's a very tiny baby. Hello, girls. Here we go. There's the little one. Not quite as comfortable as the adult females. hiding away behind a fallen tree. We still see you. It's always fascinating to me how you look at antelope calves and the approach they take to camouflaging themselves. They're always born, especially with these big species, things like wildebeest, waterbuck, always are born much lighter than the adults. And you can see how it helps to hide the little babies away. Very cute. How old would you say that little one is, Brent? About a couple of weeks, maybe less, a couple of days.
Week, 2 at most.
Come on, it's all right. See how comfortable Mom is. Baby hasn't quite worked out what the vehicles are yet and if it's safe to emerge. Nibbling away, trying to get as much use out of the dried grasses as they can. Those incredibly nimble lips, used in conjunction with the teeth to draw up the grass. And that fluffy, thick coat that I always think looks terribly uncomfortable and warm. It actually isn't. It's very cleverly designed in the way that the air can pass through the coat. And still working as an insulating layer for when they move about in water. And I know that a couple of you commented the other day about the fact that they are covered in a musky oil that they secrete. It does give them a very distinctive smell. I can smell them from here. And you can usually, I found waterbuck before just by smell alone. Now, they have that smelly scent to them, and that's often given rise to the fallacy that Daniel's brought up, that predators avoid waterbuck, or avoid eating waterbuck because the smell puts them off, or that they have an unpleasant taste. And as I mentioned before, both Karula and Tingana, both on waterbuck kills, absolutely not borne out in practice. Predators are not that fussy and not at all concerned with the scent of a waterbuck. It just depends very much on the prey selection and the availability of prey that will determine what each predator selects to feed on. So for lions, especially with just females, with a couple of females in a pride, they will be sure to target a waterbuck if they come across them. A little baby like this would just be a bite-sized snack. Still not sure. Come on. Wrong way, little one. Unless Mom is that way. Oh, it's one of our largest antelope species, or this is probably the smallest example. And Roy was wondering, how much can a waterbuck weigh? And the answer is probably well up to about close to 300 kilograms. Maybe a little bit less for the females, but definitely for us, we don't often, I mean, I've certainly never seen any eland around here. It's not the right sort of habitat for them. Just trying to see if I can get you another view of the calf. But for us, one of the largest antelope, between that and the kudu that you could see out here. So definitely a healthy meal for something like a lion. Plenty of meat. I would estimate it around 250 to 300 kilograms, depending on the size of it. Little one is dashed off into the thick bush, so we'll move on, see what else we can find. And that equates to roughly about 650 pounds, odd pounds. That's just a rough guess, Roy. Definitely one of our largest, and I think probably heavier than a kudu, unless it's a very large kudu bull. But a kudu stands taller at the shoulder. There we go. How very convenient. Hello, little kudu. Slightly nervous. Quite a young kudu cow. So she's smaller than a waterbuck. The largest of the spiral horned antelope that we are likely to see out here. The only other larger one, as I mentioned, was the eland, the largest antelope in southern Africa. And this little male with his horns just starting to poke through. This is also on the menu, or the youngsters are definitely on the menu for the leopards of this area. I haven't seen, since we had our first kudu calf stumbling on very wobbly legs, only a couple of hours old, a few weeks ago, I haven't seen a single kudu calf. That doesn't mean they're not out there, though. Kudu love the thick vegetation around drainage lines and these sorts of areas. So they could be hiding away. I just personally haven't seen any since that wonderful morning. It's interesting in terms of prey selection, particularly with lion prides, the way in which they select their prey, and it very much depends on whether or not there is a male with them while they're hunting. So for, let's say, for example, the Nkahuma ladies, a kudu or a waterbuck like the ones that we were looking at would be probably one of their first choices in terms of a meal that they might decide to choose and go after and hunt. That being said, as soon as you add a male into the equation, they start to target much larger prey. So the buffalo bulls in particular, fall prey to them. The sun just starting to peek out over the horizon. On the leaves, but being a little bit camera shy this morning, not as obliging as the waterbuck that we got to watch nibbling away at the grasses, at the sort of shoot level, at the base of the grasses. And Debbie was watching closely as they feed and was wondering, why do they skip over certain types of grass? Is it a personal preference? Is it a personal taste? And Debbie, it's first of all to do with the species of grass. Certain grasses have a higher nutritional content, they're better for the animal, they get more out of them for the amount of effort that they put into, particularly with ruminants, that they put into digesting them. So there's certain species, for example, red grass, buffalo grass, those sort of species that have a higher nutritional content than others. And that's what the animals are targeting. They're looking for the best, so they have a good sniff. And then also the fact that certain grasses are slightly greener at the shoots, although not terribly much at the moment. But they shift over and they look for the palatability of the grass and then the nutritional content of the grass. And also it's just their style of feeding. It's rather haphazard, moving from shoot to shoot. And if you think about the way that grasses have evolved in conjunction with the animals that eat them, you don't want to have all of their growth points nibbled away. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any grasses growing back. So that haphazard way of eating is a really good approach to... Sorry, I'm just checking for these tracks here. Nope, just zebra. About that, and Tommy on Twitter has wished me a good luck, saying good luck with my search for a carmine bee-eater. Yesterday afternoon on the sunset safari, we had a beautiful shot of a carmine bee-eater highlighted in the sunset with those pinks and reds really clearly showing through, and I mentioned I was going to challenge Brent to try and find the first carmine bee-eater in the morning. Already done. Did you find one? You've seen a few. Well, there we go. So Brent has already beaten me. But thank you very much for the good wishes. Doesn't count when we're on the same vehicle, though. The morning didn't quite go exactly as we planned. And speaking of not being able to plan mornings, let's find out how Mr. James Henry's morning is going.
Good morning again, everyone. I'm sorry, Andrew's choice of framing there has left me.
Oh, natural.
I'm not sure why he did that. I'm giving him the blame entirely. I will deal with him when we go off air again. Okay, we've come up towards this buffalo who's clearly not particularly amazed by the Valentine's Day sunrise we've just seen. It is absolutely stunning. Well, it was absolutely stunning. It's now gone behind this vast cloud, and I'm very grateful for this vast cloud, let me tell you, because I think it's going to be a very hot day. We've come up Gallagher shortcut. We're on our way to Sydney's Dam, going to see what's happening there. In the meantime, not much else has happened, and so we're going to continue. I don't want to push this poor little buffalo out the way, well, big buffalo out the way. His friends are in there, and I'm sure these are the chaps that have been hanging around Gallagher Pan and the Juma Dam Pan. And here, oh, he's very relaxed about us, isn't he? That's wonderful. I think we should honor him with a little sighting. So, of course, an old buffalo bull, his days of seeking the favors of the females in his herd are probably nearing their end. And a very nice shot there of, they're actually called dew claws, believe it or not. And those, I think, are the 1st and 5th digits. And we were chatting yesterday and the day before about the fact that so many mammals are so structurally similar. And even though that buffalo has got a cloven hoof and those 2 dew claws, it does actually have 5 digits in the same way that you and I have 5 digits. They're just fused in different ways, and obviously they're very different shapes. But that's what those dew claws are, vestigial digits. Vestigial, for our younger viewers, means sort of not used anymore and not functional anymore. Well, that was a very interesting sighting. Thank you, Andrew, for that. I'll have to deal with you after this. I'll perhaps drive you through a Valentine's Day Sisyphus. Oh, and by the way, Brent Leo Smith says he saw a carmine bee-eater this morning. That is absolute nonsense. There's no ways he managed to identify any kind of bird in the light that they were driving through. And I think the next time you see Brent, I will ask you to tell him to keep his eye firmly in the camera lens. Otherwise, he's going to make blurry pictures. Jamie and I will look for the carmine bee-eater. I suppose it would be more appropriate for their vehicle to find the carmine bee-eater. I wonder if Saint Valentine liked the colour red, if he knew that, if he used to sort of go about the place drawing himself little red hearts, posting them to people. I tell you what I would like to know while we drive along and we're not seeing a great deal in the way of exciting wildlife. What is the relationship of Saint Valentine to Cupid, and how are they connected with this day? I don't know the answer to that question, so perhaps you could tell me. #SafariLIVE, questions@wildearth.tv. You are on a live Valentine's Day sunrise safari. Of course, I suppose many of you in America are not quite on Valentine's Day yet. Hello, Tom in Dallas. You say that Saint Valentine is also the patron saint of chocolate. We're assuming you're being facetious there. I think that's quite amusing. I think these days he'd probably make a lot of money off being the patron saint of chocolate. And you also want to know what are the traditional gifts given in this part of the world for Valentine's Day. We really do take our lead from the Western world. We don't really have a traditional Valentine's Day South Africanism. I suppose red roses would be the things that are given around, so no, nothing really that isn't from the commercial hub of the Western world. I don't think. Andrew, are you aware of any particularly South African Now, I'm going to stop here. The last 4 times I've come past here, there have been some African hawk eagles.
Already saw one fly.
Yeah, one flew off the road there. I don't know what they're doing here. I think at one stage there was one on this termite. There. It's in that marula tree. It's flown around into that marula tree there. I can't even see the bird, but I can tell you that it's in that tree. There it is. You can just sort of see its tail sticking out between the branches. You can also hear the Franklin's alarm calling. And of course, an African hawk eagle's favorite breakfast is Franklin. But otherwise, all is quiet again. Very gentle, quiet sound. Very gentle, quiet beginning to the morning. I'm sure it's not gentle wherever those wild dogs are. There. There goes the hawk eagle. Did you get him, Andrew? Well done. Okay. You see, they're not normally that skittish, and every time we come past here, one of them flies up from somewhere, but I can't find a nest anywhere. Whether maybe there's an active termite mound that they're eating from, I don't know. Brilliant. Cats in Tampa. You've just started your bird list. You say you started on the 22nd of January and you've already got 48 birds. I think that's very impressive. We will certainly try and find you a few more. Let us know if there are any specific ones that you think that you should have and don't yet. There's a little giraffe frolicking about, or running away from something. I'm not sure which. See him there, Andrew? Looking a bit terrified. I just saw him running across the road. Now, we've watched him grow up, of course, from a very tiny little calf. And his mother has been around here with the sort of seemingly unwanted attentions of a big bull for the last few days. What I love about this young calf is the paintbrush top to his horns. You can see there that he's got these slightly ridiculous paintbrush horns. There's the cow behind. That's great. You can see there there we go. You can see her. She doesn't look too panicked at all, so I'm going to assume that there aren't a pride of lions. There isn't a pride of lions herring across towards them. But he's definitely looking at something. A sneak forward. Something has arrested his attention. Going to be quite a nice shot. Look at him peeping up over the top of the termite mound there. And there you can very clearly see his little paintbrush tips to his horns, which will eventually be bald, of course, once he grows up and discovers ladies and starts fighting over them with his cohorts. Andrew, is that your stomach turning over there? You're feeling all right, are you?
Yes.
We know you had a sensitive time the other day. It's actually not a cow, that's a bull. That's the bull. So all three of them are obviously still together around here. I'm still very interested though as to why the youngster was staring in this direction. Now, for those of you who are perhaps newish viewers, I can tell that's a bull because his horns are completely bald on top there. There's a really nice example of what the young calf's horns are going to look like eventually. And that's from when the giraffe neck each other. They sort of fight by thrashing each other's necks with their heads, and that eventually pulls the hair out at the top of the horns. The other thing it does, of course, is create the calcification there on the skull. You can see that bump on the front of his head. Now he is eating, and it never ceases to amaze me. He is eating a black monkey thorn, which has thorns on it so vicious that they would shred your hands were you to try and pull off some of the leaves that he is doing with his tongue. And I have yet to hear a plausible answer for how that is possible. Look at that. Ooh. What a wonderful query. Genevieve, you're in New York and you want to know, in honor of Valentine's Day, what animal is the most attentive lover out here in the bush? Well, of course, the animal that does the most loving is the porcupine. Now, of course, of all the animals to do the most mating in the bush, the porcupine is possibly the least qualified structurally. Porcupines, of course, have to mate every single day in order for the female to cycle. And that, of course, is a complicated process of moving some fairly dangerous spikes out of the way before copulation can take place. So porcupines, I suppose, would be considered the most attentive lovers. Every single day they must mate or the female doesn't cycle. Look at that tongue. This chap, of course, is also very attentive. He's been trying his luck for, well, in the lead up to Valentine's Day, at least 7 days. Perhaps today he will be lucky. It's always amazed me, that little fact about porcupine life. And for a long time people thought, well, you know, porcupines just do it for fun. But it isn't, in fact, that they are just having a fun time, as it were, although they probably are doing that too. It is an essential part of mating. And what's interesting is that when we talk about mating, we do sometimes talk, ooh, I think he's got a bit of an injury there, Andrew.
He's been kicking.
He's been kicking.
Both legs.
Yes. Look at that. He's lost his hair there. It's almost like he's been kneeling. That's probably from lying down, actually. Giraffe do lie down, and they fold their legs up underneath them, and there's some injuries probably from kicking. That's actually a good point. I wonder if that isn't from the female, you know. It could well be from the female. As he's walked up behind her, she's probably given him a swift kick or two, or 7. Isn't that a wonderful shot? That's beautiful. And there was a golden touch of light initially as the sun came between the horizon and the cloud. And now you can see the light has gone very flat indeed. Hi, Colleen. You were on drive yesterday morning when I said that we were watching some zebra, and I said if they lose condition, what happens is their manes lie down. So it's difficult to tell with zebra whether they're under nutritional stress or not, simply because they always look fat, and that's because they're what we call hindgut fermenters. There's always gas in the hind stomach. And I said that the mane lies down because the fat reserves on the back of the neck, which hold the mane up, start to become depleted and then the mane lies down. Now, you want to know if the same can be said for giraffe. No, Colleen, it can't. A giraffe's mane never stands up in the same way that a zebra does. As giraffe, being a ruminant, is actually much easier to assess their physical condition. They, just like cattle, basically, their hips will start to show and they start not to look so good. I'm just going to get hold of Jamie. She's hailing me on the radio. Go ahead. Okay, copy, thank you. Might make my way there. I'm just going to check the dam quickly. Right, Andrew, that's enough of giraffes. Let's move on. See if we can find some porcupines. Every single day, a new Twitter handle comes through to me, and I am astounded, because I then have to refer to somebody by their Twitter handle. Now, Rewired Taught. A Rewired Port. Thank you, Rewired. Right, Rewired Port, thank you for joining us. You want to know why that giraffe's tongue is blue? I don't know. I don't know why most of the ruminants have got blue tongues, blue to purplish tongues, and I couldn't rightly tell you. Safe to say that there is probably quite a thick, leathery sort of covering to it, and you know that may well help them pull the leaves off those thorny branches. But I'm not sure why they would be blue. So if anybody's got an idea, let me know. I've actually never read anything as to why they should be blue. But if you look at a buffalo's tongue, it's also kind of dark bluish. So I'm not really sure. In fact, most of the ruminants, now that I think of it, if you look at an impala's tongue, or nyala, or kudu, they also have very dark tongues. I don't know. But thank you for the question. I'm sorry I can't answer it for you. And another classic. Hello, Raid Freak. We were looking at that giraffe, and initially, of course, the youngster looked fairly terrified. And so the question from Raid Freak is a valid one. Do they have any natural predators? Yes, lions. Lions enjoy eating giraffe, and in some areas will actually specialize in them. I haven't seen too many giraffe being killed here. I think the Nkuhuma Pride do take out the odd giraffe now and then. They're not that difficult to kill if you can make them run, because they will eventually trip over something. But they can be very vicious indeed, and they kick both with front and back legs. And so they're not that easy to kill if they're not terrified and running over rocky ground. But yes, lions will eat them. And a giant clan of hyenas will eat them. And certainly a small one, of course, would be vulnerable to attack from lions and hyenas. There's one more giraffe at the dam here, and not much else. We'll just have a quick look here, and then I think we'll move on. Mel, you're tweeting to us like a grey-headed sparrow of the morning, and you want to know if giraffe make any sound. They do, you know, not very often. I think more often than we think they do, because they speak with each other infrasonically, so they talk over big distances at a frequency too low for our fairly average ears to hear. But they also do make other sounds, which are also uncommon. They will snort if they're alarmed. It's not very often that they do it, though. And then I have heard them sort of roar almost. So there was a young female giraffe who gave birth to a stillborn calf. And for 4 or 5 days, she stood around it And there was a male leopard in attendance for quite a long time, and that male leopard kept trying to take the little calf away. And every time it came near the calf, the mother would bellow and roar. She'd make a noise. I've only ever heard it once, never heard it again from giraffe, but they can be vocal if they have to be. Look at him walking there across that fairly desolate landscape. Now, of course, many of you will know, if you are interested in giraffe, that we don't only find one subspecies of giraffe. I think at last count there were 7 to 9, depending on your biological persuasion. This one, Margaret in Kansas, is the southern giraffe. And you want to know if it was the Maasai giraffe? No, the Maasai giraffe is found in Kenya. This is the southern giraffe. You get something called a Rothschild's giraffe. You get a... oh, you get lots of them. Reticulated giraffe, Thornycroft's giraffe. There's a West African giraffe. What else is there? I forget. It's an intimidating swathe of them. I haven't seen any other than this one. And this is the southern giraffe. Nice question. Thank you for that, Margaret. I think I'm a little giraffed out at the moment. Let's go and see if we can find something else. Right. Now, Jim in California, you've come through with a nice answer to why a giraffe's tongue should be that dark color. And you said because it's to prevent sun damage, because they have their heads tilted up and their tongues are out so much of the time. That's an interesting one. Thank you for that, Jim. Do you think that goes for buffalo and kudu and impala as well? I think that's quite an interesting theory. Thanks, Jim. Just to keep you posted, apparently there is going to be a change on the other vehicle as well. Jamie is not feeling particularly well, so she's heading back. If you're wondering why we're not seeing from them, we're going to have to get Rasputin the Russian on camera, and Brent Leo Smith will be presenting for the rest of the morning. Okay, and Teresa, you say on Twitter that the giraffe tongue is black because of a lack of blood vessels. Well, you see, that would make sense to a certain extent, because obviously you don't want to be tearing those blood vessels on thorns. So maybe that's a good one, and maybe it is quite a kind of bloodless piece of the animal. Would have to be replaced though then, because obviously nothing can live without blood in it and oxygenation. And so I imagine maybe it's got a bit like almost like a horn, where there is a very limited blood supply, and yeah, it's quite hard. Probably also gets replaced quite a lot. Thank you. That's great, Teresa. Marvelous answers, these. This is why having so many people on the back of your safari vehicle is so wonderful. And I learn just as much as I give out, in fact probably more on most drives. So thank you for your answers. We're heading now in a southerly direction down towards Impala Plains. Now, we're going to drive past another termite mound or two during the course of this drive, and Valerie in Pennsylvania, you'd like to know why it is, or how it is, that you can tell just by looking that a termite mound is active or not. I'm going to try and find a good example for you, and then I'll show you. Sometimes you can't, sometimes it's difficult, but most of the time it is actually possible to tell. Let's find a good one first. There is the western horizon, just being touched by the day. The western horizon sloping, listing to port as we go around this corner. We'll just stop here and have a bit of a listen, because we're coming into a clearing, which is of course an area where the wild dogs might come and check something to eat. We'll just stop around the corner here. While we stopped, Andrew, there's a Senegal lapwing just making its way across the clearing there. Just in front of us there, it's very well camouflaged, but I'm sure you'll be able to see it. Yes, a little bit right. And now he's gone further right. There he is. Well spotted. Look at that beautiful eye. It's always, to me, the subtle things. So you look at a camouflaged bird like that, if it lay down, you wouldn't see anything of it at all. Fairly nondescript coloration. And then you see that bright, beautiful yellow eye. And it's just a little touch. Wonderful color. Those legs move. I think we take a lot of bird movements for granted. And if you've ever watched a bird hop around in the tree, in fact, if you can do that, just stick your head out the window or go outside when the time is right and watch a bird hopping about in a tree. And then try and imagine yourself doing the same thing, being the same size. So, for example, a bird will just jump sort of 2 or 3 of its own height up into different branches, flapping its wings in amongst some particularly sort of thick bush. The strength involved, the power-to-weight ratio involved in being able to propel yourself up, 2 or 3 times your own height, just with a jump, is really astonishing. There's no human being who could ever hope to match something like that. There's his Valentine's Day partner. They don't look like they're particularly in the throes of a Valentine's Day celebratory breakfast, do they, Andrew?
A little bit early, I think.
A little bit early, yes. They've just woken up. I don't suppose any of us are at our best when we've just woken up. I can't hear anything further. I'm going to also I haven't forgotten, there's just a lovely red-billed hornbill who's leapt off that red thorn tree. How very appropriate. And he's picking up a few termites and insects that he can find. Just having a little bit of a dig. Look at and here's another movement that a bird makes that we are perhaps not as amazed by as we should be. You go and stick there's some ants. The accuracy with which that bird is just pecking down and picking things up is astonishing. You couldn't do that with your hands. And remember that beak is an appendage that is not exactly sort of full of feeling. So the ability to judge the distance and not sort of headbutt the floor by mistake is amazing, especially in a brain the size of a pea, or even smaller. Picking up grubs. That's amazing. Hey, isn't that incredible? How does it know to dig there? He's having a wonderful meal there. I think that's just astonishing. Wow. Let's just watch one more. See if he's what he's digging for there. I think he's picking up largely ants. Those are definitely larvae, though. The buried larvae, perhaps of dung beetles. I don't know. Perhaps even caterpillars. See that? I'm going to go and have a look. While I go and have a look, Brent Smith is out on the vehicle. Oh, hang on, we've got a question coming through first before we go across to Brent. Now, we're watching this bird feeding, of course, on the ground. And, Brian, you want to know why the bill is that shape. Well, Brian, you can see it here. It's so that he can dig with it. It's a multi-purpose beak. They're omnivorous birds. It's so that he can dig a bit. He can accurately pick up small insects and grubs, but he can also do some damage. If he finds a larger insect or arachnid, perhaps like a scorpion or a big spider, he can, you know, spear it to death before swallowing it. So it's a multi-purpose omnivorous beak. They also eat fruit. Nice question. Thank you, Brian. On that note, let's head across to Brent. He's heading towards an elephant herd. You're going to have to greet him for the first time, well, in person this morning. And I will see you, hopefully, with some answers as to what that hornbill is eating.
So, in a strange turn of events, you are getting all three presenters who are on the ground in one morning and making a rare appearance on camera. The first time since March 2015. Alex Voz. So, unfortunately, Jamie and Brian are suffering from the same bug that's going around camp. Jamie's just set in a little bit later this morning. So, we're going to take over for them. And while we're on our way home, we did spy a herd of elephants. And of course, they look like they have decided to meander off, but I'm sure we'll be able to find them again. We're spread out feeding through this area. Ah, there they are. Well, there's one at least. Quite a lot of young ones with this group, but it looks like the rest of the group, judging from the direction of that area there, is headed down towards Central. So I think we'll do the same. Hello, madam. Quite a nice view from up here, as she's at the base of that little river system. Maybe I can hear a few more down towards Central Road. Just listening there carefully, making sure that the larger group hadn't split into some smaller groups and we were following a splinter rather than the main herd. And that happens quite often, specifically now when it's a really dry herd. You'll often find massive groups of elephants together, and will be made up of multiple, normally related family groups that sometimes, if they're feeling a little bit of stress from food pressure, etc., will actually splinter into smaller groups and feed like that. And then often those groups join together when we're around the water. So unfortunately, Jamie and I didn't have any tracks of any of the big cats coming back in from the east. So while we try catch up with this breeding herd of elephants, let's jump on with James for one of the smaller creatures out here.
Now look at this, just a quick, what we call cameo here from a tiny little grasshopper that I picked up where that hornbill was feeding. I didn't find what he was feeding on, bar a few ants. But look at this tiny little camouflaged grasshopper. He's now, of course, stuck in a forest where he didn't want to be, and he shan't be for much longer. But I just thought we should show you this quite astonishing little grasshopper that is no more than 2 millimeters across. Isn't that incredible? All right, let's head back to Brent and on his way to the elephants.
Here we go, we've caught up with the rest of the herd. One female at the back left looks a little bit unrelaxed, but I'm sure she'll calm down shortly. There we go, you can see her ears coming down and not giving us any hassles anymore. Quite a nice herd, I would say. Oh, look at the little guy playing. I'd love it doing look at those two little ellies. So the one on the left's older and bigger, and we often see, well, not often, but occasionally see the bigger elephant sort of lie down or go down on the ground to entice the smaller one into play. You can see he's got some control of his trunk. Probably around a year on. Look at how he's sitting, isn't that just adorable? Now, this is definitely not a pose you see elephants in often. And look, the other little guy's also lying down. Now, there we go, and charging in, charging out. You have to think, look at that. Little ellies will often rest and lie down far more often than the larger individuals. Of course, they need, while growing, they need more respite. So they do snooze and lie down. But this isn't everyday behavior, so quite nice. Look at there goes the little one. Going to say hello. Is that mom, or is that just another big female? I think that might be mom. But the little monster's been off playing with the other youngsters. Oh, I think we're trying to decide whether it's going to no, not going to charge a vehicle today. And the herd is moving off again slowly. And they're going to cover big distances at this time of the year with the current dry conditions. Oh, look, he's back in the road. So we had quite a nice chat on yesterday's Sunrise Safari about where everything got its name from. And I wasn't sure where elephants got their name from. And thanks to the help of some of our viewers, elephant is a derivative from the ancient Greek word for ivory. So really, really interesting. I know where the scientific name comes from, which is Loxodonta africana, which translated basically means long teeth of Africa. Loxa, long, donta, like dental, donta, teeth, and Africana. Now moving into a very thick block. Alex is just niggling at his fingers that snuck into shot there. But as I said, some of the females didn't look too relaxed. We're also not going to push them, especially now that it's so dry and they are under such pressure for food. Really thick, really built up block. There's a lot of stuff that's been pushed over by the elephants, so very difficult to move through. So I think we would just interfere with them while we move through here. Here we go. We'll just have one last glimpse of them as they disappear. There's one playing with one of the trees that's been pushed over already by another elephant. But they're not too far away from the Djuma waterhole. So guys, keep an eye on that dam cam. They might appear there a little bit later. And we're going to leave these eddies and we're going to head off to the only area we have not checked this morning, and that is the south and west section. There's maybe the leopard black is lying in that area. As we've been talking about heading off to the southwest of Djuma, we've got a question from South Carolina, and Bill says a group of 10 of our viewers are planning a trip to Djuma. That's always a good idea, guys. And they're going to be arriving or planning.
Peyton Manning is dealing with yet another controversy.
2017, what will be 2017? Is this a good time for the trip? Well, it is. The temperature is quite pleasant. It's sort of end of summer, beginning of winter. The joy of the Sabi Sands is the sightings are generally very good all the time. Now, if you're staying at Djuma, at Vuatela or Gallagher, you have access to quite a lot more area than we do. So probably close on 8,000 hectares. So you will definitely see everything you want to see. That's the joy of the Sabi Sands, because it has been a commercial operation for so long. The animals are really habituated, and it doesn't really matter what time of the year you come, you should see all you would like to see. So very exciting for Bill and another 9 of our viewers for planning a trip to Djuma. Now, I got asked a while ago if elephants spit up food. Or throw up. As I said, I've never seen them throw up. I have seen them sort of spit out a bunch of leaves and sticks and stuff that they don't like. And there's one there. And that's an elephant who decided it's not so happy with whatever it was eating and spat it out. Not thrown it up, but just spat it out. There we go. And you don't see it too often. I have been seeing it more and more as we push further into this drought. It could be, and the trees obviously are also going to be feeling the effects of the drought. And their tannin levels might be higher. You also find they're probably not getting as much nutrients from the grasses, which could also be causing that not to be as palatable. And the elephant might be deciding that there's not enough nutrients in this ball of what I'm eating. Very cloudy Valentine's morning. Welcome to Ava. We'd like to know, what are the tallest trees in this area? Well, probably the 2 tallest species outright we have, 3, is the marula trees. There's one coming up on the left here. There's a marula tree. But I think that definitely the 2 tallest species completely would be some of the really big leadwoods around the Mawati River system, and the really big African ebonies or jackalberries. Those would be the 2 tallest of trees that we get here. We do get some very tall knobthorns and some very tall scotias, but I would say it's definitely the jackalberries, African ebonies, and the really big leadwoods. Quite often, quite a few trees look taller than they are because they're growing atop a termite mound, so they're cheating, like standing on a box. Good morning to you, and Pam is in Colorado, home of the Rocky Mountains and some fantastic trout fishing. Pam would like to know if I could show her a sausage tree, and are there any fruits on it yet? Pam, there's only one sausage tree I've seen on Juma, and it currently doesn't have any fruits, but there we go. With Jamie and I this morning, you had a baby and female waterbuck. Now with Alex and I, we have a nice big male waterbuck. Here we go. A very distinct white ring around the bottom. Following mechanism, more important for females with babies. He's just making sure we're not threat. I'm going to try to sneak a bit closer. See if we can roll. There we go. Use the gradient of the land to our advantage. Hello, big boy. Now, that very beautiful head and horns are the emblem for the Sabi Sands Game Reserve. While we leave that waterbuck bull and continue on in our search of other animals out here on Juma, Christopher in Arizona says he's noticed that the inside of the ears of waterbuck and other antelope have a feather-like quality to them. Christopher, I haven't really noticed that. They do have fine hairs. Those hairs obviously to warn them as a protective thing as soon as any bug or insect tries to crawl into their ear. But generally, once you're outside of that initial edge, it's very sort of oily, thick and waxy inside most antelopes' ears, and the skin is bare. Slowly heading south. We're about to cross through the Milwaukee River system. Have a quick look for tracks there. Although I'm quite confident, having been with Jamie earlier this morning as we checked the eastern boundary, I don't think Tingano or Karula came in that way. It is possible they could have looped south and then come through, heading in a north, sort of westerly direction. So fingers crossed. I know James is even further to the west, so let's see what's happening on Arathusa.
We are now heading due west, as Brent Leo Smith said, and we're going into Arathusa. Nothing going on Impala Plains or Impala Road. The odd Senegal lapwing, one or two doves, and a couple of termite mounds. Valerie, I have not forgotten about you. In fact, there's a wonderful example of the termite mound from which we are being observed by a very small carnivore. You'll see that, Andrew. Back a bit. There we go. So, Valerie, there is a nice termite mound, and I'll show you a few as we go. One's probably not going to suffice. You can see a little dwarf mongoose on the top right-hand side there. He's observing us. There are quite a few of them. Well, 2. Now, Valerie, I would say that this mound is largely inactive at the moment. It won't necessarily stay like that. The reason I say that is because there are dwarf mongoose in it, A, and B, because it just looks like, I mean, the grass is growing out of it, but there are no fresh chimneys. There are no fresh chimneys coming out of the top of the termite mound or the side. Now, for a long time, I used to think that termite mounds were obviously inactive if they have grass on them, and that is not actually the case, because I think parts of the termite mound can go inactive. They, you know, the termites just stop building on them and they neglect them, but they still they keep building from other parts of it. So that one, I would say, is inactive because it has dwarf mongoose in it. There is some grass on it, and there are no fresh chimneys coming out of it. But I will find you an active one, and I'll show you what I mean as we go. Just while we're sitting here with those little dwarf mongoose, they don't like to come out when it isn't fully daylight, and they don't like to be out after the sun has gone down. They keep very civilized hours, and they'll go off and forage now. And unlike there's another one to the left-hand side, Andrew. Unlike their unlike their counterparts, he's gone now, sorry about that. Unlike their counterparts, the slender mongoose and the banded mongoose, and possibly even the white-tailed mongoose, they're not great snake eaters. They will eat snakes, but they will basically eat any kind of meat. It doesn't even have to be sort of reptile or amphibian meat. They'll happily eat lots of scorpions, grubs, insects. They will eat small reptiles. They'll eat small frogs. Anything that will provide them with a slightly meaty meal is what they will eat. And we're often asked if we get meerkats here. Yes, we don't get meerkats here, but that's probably the closest. The dwarf mongoose, either that or the banded mongoose, from the same family. The Hesperidae, I think, is it? Oh, no, it's the Herpestidae. Herpestidae. That is the family of the mongoose. Okay, let's carry on. I've just noticed, you know, of course, Rusty we've called Rusty because, well, Rusty is just very rusty. And quite nicely, I've noticed that there is now a very nice viewing hole through which I can see the floor round about where my feet are. So very soon, once it is rusted away a little bit more, we'll be able to track without looking out of the car. We'll just be able to sit like that and observe the tracks going past on the ground underneath the car. It's very convenient, it's very clever. It's a brilliant design. I'm pretty sure that Rusty must have been parked in the sea before she came to live in the bush. But she's been very good to us over the last few weeks or so, and what I do like about her is her very quiet engine. Oh, marvelous. Jigger's a bit over-enthusiastic. Some might say completely unmanageable. Marsha, you've been listening since the beginning of the drive, and we were asked about what the most sort of Valentine's Day type of animals were, the most sort of attentive lovers, and I mentioned the fact that porcupines mate every day in order for the female to cycle. And Marsha, you want to know what happens if they miss a day? Do they then have to start again? No, I'm sure they're allowed the odd day off now and again. You know, I mean, and I imagine a female could quite easily lose her partner, or the other way round. And I don't think she then has to mate again 365 times in order for her to cycle. So I think you'll find that they're probably allowed the odd day off. But there will be I'm sure there is a build-up period. Now the question is why? Why do porcupines have this trait? Why is it that they need to breed? or mate so much in order for the female to cycle? I'm not sure that I have the answer, except to say that it might be a way of maintaining the male support, because I think they do stay in a monogamous pair. And if the male is mating all of the time with the female, it might mean that he hangs around and stays around for protection of the little ones. That would be my guess. There's this small raptor up there, Andrew. Say, when can you see him?
No, in the back.
In the back of it. There we go. Oh, now we should know what that is, shouldn't we? What I would like you to take note of, for those of you who are keeping bird lists, of course, a new bird list being created as we speak, 48 birds, perhaps this is the 49th. What you need to notice there is the very obvious break across the chest. So cat in Tampa, that very obvious line across the chest is distinctive of this raptor. Small raptor, about the size of a Wahlberg's eagle, not an eagle because the legs are not feathered to the base. That is a steppe buzzard. And not a buzzard in the way that you would say, like a New World buzzard, which is basically like a vulture. This buzzard is a standard issue raptor out here. Catch prey, it's not a carrion eater. Probably eats the odd bit of carrion, but it probably largely eats reptiles and small mammals. And I know I've said this before, but many of you who live in the northern hemisphere, and especially in Europe and Britain, will be very tired of grey skies. But I like having grey skies out here every so often. Ooh. This is one of these wonderful questions where I truly don't know the answer, so I'll have to think about it. And anybody who wants to come up with an answer, please do so. Katrina asks the brilliant question, why is it that in tropical areas or warm areas we have colourful birds, whereas in northern or really sort of higher latitudes where it's colder, the birds tend to be a lot more drab? Why would that be the case? I feel like there's an obvious answer to it that I should know, but don't. So please send through your answers. I'm going to give it a bit of thought. Andrew knows. Andrew?
Yeah, it's got to do with the sun.
It's got to do with the sun.
Like in this light, there's no sun, so there's no point having nice colours.
Right, okay. So in an area with less cloud, where there's more days of sun, a bird will more likely...
It's an obvious one, James.
Okay, right. And you've read that, or that's your...
Just came up with that right now.
You came up with that right now. You know, you can't pay for that stuff, eh? Okay. Why then, Andrew, in the Amazon, where it is very dark most of the time, do we have bright colours?
It's an anomaly.
Ah, I see. It's quite a big anomaly. Well, that's an interesting theory. Thank you, Andrew, for that. Not entirely sure that I'm convinced of it. So we're now on the border of Arathusa and Juma. On the subject of birds, while we're here, I'm going to stop for Valerie. Valerie, here is an active termite mound. You can see these are very freshly made chimneys. And while I'm getting out of the car and arranging myself upon that termite mound, Susan, you want to know if francolins are only ground birds. No, they're not. They fly very well, actually. And you cannot only be a ground bird out here, because if you're a ground bird out here, you will get eaten very fast. It's completely unlike birds from islands. Birds from island areas can often be flightless because there are no mammals to eat them. But out here, no flightless birds except the ostrich, which of course is taller than Andrew. Now, the reason I've taken this out is I want you to hear. I'm going to move up to this area here, and you're going to hear them scuttling away. You're going to hear the sound, I hope. I don't know if you heard anything there. Ooh, but okay, so you can see some termites around here. Can you see them, Andrew?
Yes.
You can also see a daddy long-legged spider here with it carrying an egg sac. You see that?
Yes.
It's carrying an egg sac. And that's probably there's another one. There's a lot going on here. And Valerie, what I can feel here is heat. There's lots of heat coming out of this termite mound, and that's obvious. It's metabolic heat. They maintain a constant temperature inside the termite mound, probably just under 40 degrees, because of course they don't make their own heat inside the body, and so they need to live in a perfectly controlled temperature environment. On a hot day, they'll open this out to create an air conditioning system. On a cold day, they'll close it up. And the smell coming out of a termite mound is the most comforting thing in the world. It smells like pure earth. Right, so this is an active one, very obviously active simply because of these chimneys that are being constructed as we speak. Hoping we might be able to get a sound, but I failed to do that for you. Okay, let's go back onto the car, get out of the way of this game drive that's coming along the way. Plug in, and off we go. Ahee! Minjani kwalani? Va kume yini namuntlha? Ayifiki. Va ri va dlaye mfumo tolo. Tinghala ti ta tsama le. Yeah, okay. Inkomu. Have a good drive. So I was just getting an update there of what's going on. I was asking, hopefully, for an update here at Arathusa. We've just turned on to Arathusa. No update at the moment. There are lions at Nkoro, which is very nice if you can happen to be able to go to Nkoro. But we'll find something here, I'm sure, something of great interest. While we're doing that, Brenty has some more Valentine's birds. Careful, Andrew. We'll go across to Brent, and I'm going to continue to the west.
So there we go, as James was saying, Valentine's birds, a monogamous pair of African hawk eagles. You can hear behind us little birds, alarm calling. Now, if you're a guinea fowl, African hawk eagles are a serious bit of danger for you. They are expert guinea fowl francolin hunters. Definitely one of the most beautiful eagles we get here. Unlike a lot of our eagles that are migratory, they are resident throughout the year. Their nest is actually off Central Road, right in the center of Djuma. So while we're sitting with an African hawk eagle, Wicked Blues Band wants to know whether we've got any hawks or falcons. I'm trying to think if we've got any specific hawks. There's a possibility. I think there have been a few records of bat hawks on the Sabi Sands, but that's quite a rare bird. Falcons, we get little Amma falcons that come through. We've seen a few this year. We've also seen Eurasian hobby falcon. We also get occasionally Lana and peregrine falcon as well. So we do get both. It doesn't look like those two are up to too much right now. So we're going to continue on. So we're going to do a quick check of the western sectors around Zeri's Road through to the big Balanites tree. I think if we get nothing there, we'll head back towards the north and see what is happening around there. So far, updates from the east and from the north of us. I know Taxon and the guys are following up, I think, on lions, the Talamati behind, somewhere in Buffalo's Hook. And I know a lot of you will be happy to know Mvula has been found. I'm not sure what kind of state he's in, but in Cheetah Plains, and also in that same area is Mkayanini, which is a leopard we've never seen on the safaris. We have seen her sub-adults, or I've seen her sub-adults, a female Shiluva, three times. Once on live safari, twice on tracking scene. And she's got two cubs now that are about 3 months old, and she's actually in the same spot with Mvula. So more than likely, well, he is still the dominant leopard in the majority of her territory. Now it seems that the Anderson male is pushing even further west, which will be pushing Tingana even further east and further into Mvula's territory. And also, Mvula's definitely in a very hard, between a rock and a hard place. He's between Tingana, coming from the west, and Shavambalan, who, if I remember correctly, is one of Karula's offspring, that is pushing in from the east from Kruger, and he's now 5 or 6 years old, so about to start challenging. Now, there's quite a bit of debate on when Mvula was born amongst us, the guides here. So I was chatting to some of the other guides at the Rangers meeting yesterday, and they have Mvula being born in 2004. At Lion Sands, and I will double check that with Panthera. We've been thinking he's 11, but if he was born in 2004, and we'll put him at 12 or early 2012, much closer to 13. And for me, that makes more sense. If I look at him, he looks like an old leopard. He looks like a 13-year-old male leopard. He doesn't look like a 11-year-old or 10, turning 11-year-old male leopard. So it'll be very interesting. I'm going to check up on the Panthera database and ask them what date they have Mvula being born in. Or could have even been 2003 or 2004, which would be correct, putting him around 13, which is what he looks like to me. He could just be a very unfortunate 11-year-old, but he is definitely not in his prime anymore. Now, always as we stop for these particular species, they tend to do a disappearing act. Oh, there we go. A little duiker, sometimes known as a Grimm's duiker in other parts of Africa, or a grey bush duiker. The totem animal of the Tswana people. A little male. He's been quite obliging as duikers go. And off he disappears. So, the reason, out of all the animals out here, the totem animal of the Tswana people is the grey duiker, or bush duiker, is due to a very, very fascinating story, and I used to say it wasn't true, about one of the first sort of paramount chiefs, which is basically like a king. Oh, it's Nelson. Is it Nelson? Or is it just a different impala with one horn? We'll have a look now. If he's blind in one eye, it could be Nelson. We have been looking for Nelson, and that eye is working. Let's have a look at the other eye. If it's two eyes, it's just another impala who's lost a horn. So for our viewers who are not sure, Nelson is a one-horned, one-eyed impala, and he's also got one ambition. So I named him after Lord Admiral Horatio Nelson. Is that a blind eye? If it has, it's made a miraculous recovery. Come on, turn. Yes, it's Nelson. Admiral Horatio Nelson of Her Majesty the Queen's Royal Navy had one eye, one arm, and one ambition, and that was to defeat Napoleon. I think it was. I might be incorrect on that, but he was to defeat someone. And our Nelson has one eye, one horn, and one ambition, and that's to avoid all lion, leopard, wild dog, and cheetah. And he's done remarkably well to survive with one eye. And looks like he's on his own. I don't see any other impala around. Normally we find him in a little bachelor group. All right, careful, Nelson. There we go. Hello, mister. Well, let's leave Nelson to his morning breakfast and give him all his hearing just in case there's a predator around and he might be able to escape. So I was just chatting about why the grey duiker was the totem animal of the Tswana people. So there's a race of people that now live mostly in Zimbabwe around a place called Bulawayo. That basically means the place of killing. They're called the Indabele. Now, the Indabele are an offshoot of the Zulu nation under King Shaka. So quite often everyone refers to him as Shaka, where it is spelled S-H-A-K-A, but in Zulu a K is pronounced as a G. So his name is actually Shaka, and I'll tell you how he got his name quite once we're finished with the Tswanas, and we'll move on to the Zulus for a bit. So, Paramount Chief Kama, they live in what is mostly Botswana. Almost 70% of the Tswana people live in Botswana, some in South Africa, very few in Zimbabwe. So the Ndebele decided, or Mzilikazi, who became the first king of the Ndebele, decided that he didn't really like Shaka's iron fist and decided to break away. And with him he took his regiment, which was a couple of thousand warriors, and they moved through South Africa. We'll continue that after. Have a look. Now, Kudu is giving us a quizzical look through the bush. Oh, deciding we're not that interesting. It's going to carry on feeding. Yes, mister, we're still here. Well, nice male kudu. There he goes. I wonder what tribe you're the totem animal of. Must be one. So they moved through to what's about modern-day Pretoria, and basically they left with very few ladies, and it was mostly a big military regiment of men. So how they became a nation of people is as they moved through southern Africa, they would attack, take cows and women, and would kill all the men or children as they moved through. So they then settled around modern-day Pretoria, and they were then pushed by the Boers, who were Afrikaans people who were trying to escape the English in the Cape, and so Mzilikazi then went further north and eventually settled on what is now quite close to the border of Botswana and Zimbabwe. And they set on a reign of terror in that area. So they would raid the Shona to the east for ladies and cows and whatever they wanted to take. And they actually made the Shona a slave nation to the Ndebele. The Shona were more pastoral. They weren't so much of a warrior tribe like the Ndebele. And then the Tswana had lots of cattle on that eastern section of Botswana, very good grasses there. And the Ndebele would frequently raid. And Paramount Chief Khama started to become quite a nuisance, putting up quite a bit of resistance, which hadn't happened before. So he got surprised one day by a raiding party of Ndebele, and they were chasing him. And the Ndebele have been known, probably some of the fittest warriors, like the Zulu warriors, and they were able to run for kilometers, and they saw him. They started running after him. And in this area is very open grassland with a very specific acacia, which forms like a domed thicket called an acacia hebeclava, or a candlepod acacia, because its pods stick straight up. And quite often there's lots of little tunnels in there. Lions like to sleep in them, leopard, wild dog, hyena, and of course things like duiker. So while running, what have you got? What have you got? Am I being blind? Alex has spotted a European roller. Well spotted, Alex. Let's see if we can sneak a little bit closer to it. So our migrants are still around, even though it's incredibly dry weather is going on. So hopefully this roller doesn't fly. And lovely pale blue coloration. And actually, while we spotted the roller, I spotted something off to the other side of the road. A bit bigger, a bit harder to miss. An elephant bull. Let's move forward a little bit. So we'll try to just quickly finish off Chief Khama's story. So he ran from these guys, and it is just these sort of domed thickets of thorns. And he was so fatigued, he didn't think he was going to get away. So as one last ditch attempt, he dived into one of these thorn thickets. And while he was lying there, he noticed a tiny little grey duiker lying less than a meter from him. Now, the Ndebele, knowing he had to be in one of these thickets, basically started poking their spears and their heads into all the thickets, and until eventually they got to the one that he was hiding in, and the duiker ran off out of the thicket. And then Ndebele said, well, if there's a duiker in there, there can't be a man hiding. So he must have gone somewhere else, and they left him, and he escaped. He was actually the man who got protection from not only the Boers and the Ndebeles, not only the Ndebeles, but the Boers as well, from the British government through a missionary by the name of Moffat, who David Livingstone married his daughter. A little bit of outside history there, but we'll chat a bit more about that once we finish with this lovely Ellie boy. Oh, yes, you're very big and scary. Very distinctive behavior. His bull's probably 25-ish. Not quite fully grown, but getting there. Nice and tall at the shoulder. And you can see desperate times as they pick up all the small little plants that are growing that you wouldn't normally see an elephant eating at this time of the year. We've been seeing them eat a lot of devil thorns as well, which also not the most common. Alice in Ohio would like to know, do elephants ever get arthritis? They do. All animals will get some form of arthritis if they live long enough. So out in the bush, elephants are probably the only ones that really get that old that can actually suffer from arthritis. But normally most animals will expire beforehand. Let's just move forward a tiny bit again. Oh, we found something nice there. Hello, big boy. Oh. Hello, mister. And actually quite interesting, we can see his toenails quite well from here. Very interesting foot structure. A massive pad that acts as a shock absorber to take the great weight of an elephant. Yes, you are of great weight. I've seen them eat sesame and all sorts of stuff that I've never normally seen them eat, wild sesame. I thought I heard another elephant rumble in the distance. I think that's what he heard. I wasn't so sure. And he's really smelling back behind him. Might be more eddies that way. Oh, yes, you're very, very, very scary. So that's very typical of an elephant bull. Every now and then it just gives a big shake of the head to let us know how big and strong he is, and we shouldn't push him. Other than that, his body language is very relaxed. You see his tail swinging nicely there. One of the most important things to look at elephants for, that are really upset when their body language it speaks, you look at their tail. As soon as their tail goes erect, yes, mister. What you going to do now? Now, quite often, this is where a lot of people would drive away quickly. And all that does is cause the elephant to chase you. Here we go. He's decided not such a problem. So a very big SafariLIVE welcome to a new viewer on YouTube whose name is Human. Human would like to know, how tall is this guy? So he's probably about 3 meters, 3 and maybe 3.2, 3.3 meters at the shoulder. Absolutely wonderful creatures. I really do love spending time with Eddie bulls in particular. It is very cute to be around all the babies and females. And there's something just incredibly calming about an elephant bull. So we quite often see elephants feeding on really sharp objects, thorns and of the acacia trees. And Insomniac's wondering, how can they do that without getting hurt? Well, if you take the oldest, toughest piece of hide you can think about. And that would literally break a kitchen knife if you had to try cut it. That's what the inside of an elephant's mouth is like. It's incredibly tough. Obviously, they've evolved to have that thick layer of skin on the inside of their mouth to enable them to feed off those very thorny plants. So we're going to stay here, see what this guy's up, and James has got something interesting to show you quickly.
Right, hello everybody. I'm trying desperately to stop saying right. I find I keep doing it, and it's becoming very irritating to me. So if I say it again, you can slap me over the back of the head while we're driving along. I'm trying to show you something here that Andrew spotted astonishingly. He hasn't spotted anything else today. And what that is the fact that a tree burned here. So you can see very clearly a line of ashy soil where nothing is growing except one piece of pioneer vegetation over here. This is the only piece of vegetation growing here. It looks like an indigofera species of some kind. But the rest of the soil, and this happens a lot, when a thick, I think it was probably a combretum tree, unless it was the rest of the silver cluster leaf, burned here. When they burn with such an intensity and for such a long time that it seems to scorch the earth. Now, why nothing can grow here now, I don't know, because ash, of course, if you burn ash, you can use it as a fertilizer. But what I think happens is that the heat is such that it denatures all of the nutrients within an area like this. And of course, plants need a lot of bacteria for their roots to grow properly. I think that's all dead in an area like this. And I think that you'll find that the larger molecules that a plant will need, that a seed will need to grow, have probably been broken up by the heat. And of course, it brings me back to a seemingly totally unrelated subject, but I know that with human beings, oh, here's something interesting. I'll bring these back with me. With human beings, if you cook food at a very hot temperature for a long time, you render it often completely nutrient-free. So, for example, and if you put vitamins in food and then cook that food at a certain temperature above maybe 60 degrees Celsius, you render it totally useless as well. And I suspect that's precisely what's happened here. The nutrients in the soil have been totally scorched out of the earth, and until there's some really good rain and some proper subsurface flow of nutrients, I don't think anything will grow there. So that was quite interesting. Here, I didn't know what these were until I realized that they were actually probably just standard issue, maybe large duiker dung that has been burned, crisped. They might be quite good for bokdrolsbuch. Yes, very nice taste. Andrew, would you like to try? No, okay, fair enough. We're on the very far western boundary now of Arathusa. To the east-west of us here, on my right-hand side, is Elephant Plains. And to the south, at least to the north, we're also on the northern boundary. Does that mean there's an elephant link? Okay, and to the north of us is Simbambili. Let's head across to Brent. I think he's still with the elephant. We're going to carry on down here. There are some zebra up ahead. We'll see if we can make them stand still.
So he's just moved around the front of us, and he's sort of haphazardly feeding away. Not very seriously. He's been breaking a few branches of these combretums and around here, but then deciding they're not worth the effort of eating. I'm just going to sit here. He's probably going to walk across the road in front of us. And he's just giving us a little bit of a look. And I think he's actually being a little bit more mischievous than anything else. He's like, oh, there's something interesting to play with, rather than what I was doing earlier, which was trying to find some food. There we go. I think he's got a bit tired of us now. Wait for the head shake. One. There we go. Here it comes. Isn't that awesome? And if you do spend a lot of time with elephants, you are able to, with almost certainty, predict what they're going to do. And with a nice Eddie Bull, just the way he's been behaving around us, you could see that head shake coming for a good 20-25 seconds before he did it. Now, you'll probably find if he's come from the Kruger or he's spent any time on our access roads, he does that to any small little car and it reacts, it drives away. But now he's like, why aren't you running away from me? I'm so big. Now, the sheepish retreat. So a lot of people who self-drive through game parks in Africa will say, oh my goodness, we got charged by an elephant. And probably if they'd sat still, this is exactly what had happened. It's because they drove and reversed away at high speed that the elephant's like, oh, fun game, let me chase it. So I think we're going to let this Ellie Ball move off. He's moving off into the bush now to continue feeding. And we're going to continue checking this western section. I'm hoping to maybe get tracks of shadow, but from us here, Alex and myself and the little Ellie, goodbye, mister. Maybe one last view. He started to feed again behind the bushes. Let's go back to James, who is with some zebras.
We were looking at some zebra, everybody, and then Andrew got a cramp in his left bottom cheek. And he then shifted very quickly, and the zebra became offended and ran away. But there are a number of them here, and as Andrew was saying, this seems to be the largest herd of zebra that he's seen in the Sabi Sands, and I think that might be true. Now, zebra, I'm just going to try and get into a position where I think they'll probably graze into the space here. Zebra occur in what we call kinship groups, which are dominated by a stallion, like the one you're looking at there. He's got a stumpy little tail, so we'll call him Stumpy the Stallion. And Stumpy the Stallion would have a number of wives and their attendant offspring. Now, he's normally got 2 or 3 wives with their attendant offspring, so this might be just a very large kinship group. He might be a particularly successful male. Otherwise, the big herds that you see sometimes here, but normally in areas like in East Africa, will be lots and lots of those kinship groups that have joined up together. Very nice. Yes. He's just smiling at us. You see that, Andrew? You can see their manes standing up. We were chatting earlier today about whether or not, or how their manes are an indicator of their health, and the fact that if they're not well, then manes will start to lie down. These chaps are all obviously in a very good way, and they're chomping on some green grass here. And I think it's still green, you know. Interestingly enough, this particular area has had probably almost double the rain that we have had at Djuma. Now, we're not far from Djuma, and that's still, I mean, they're still probably sitting only on about a quarter of the rain they should have had. But there has been some more rain, and you can see that it's much greener than some of the areas of Djuma that we are used to seeing. That zebra was yawning. That's what that movement was. It's a really nice herd. I just love the colour of them framed with green. Black and white, framed with green. And there they head off into elephant plains. And the only way, of course, that Stumpy the Stallion will ever be sort of unseated is when he is fought for his harem by another younger male. But normally what happens is that if a younger, stronger male comes into the area and starts to fight with him, his daughters, Stumpy's daughters, will go off with the new male, but his wives will normally remain relatively faithful to him unless he really is old and decrepit. So that's quite a nice little story. A good Valentine's Day story, don't you think, Andrew?
Mm-hmm.
one of faith to the old and decrepit. Goodbye, Stumpy. May you have a marvellous St. Valentine's Day. We are going to continue our merry way to the south. Now, wonderful information here from Kathy. Thank you. Kathy, you have told us basically that Cupid and St. Valentine are unrelated. Cupid, of course, was the Roman god of love, a mischievous fellow. I'm not sure that he was always the cherub that he's made out to be in a lot of popular culture. And St. Valentine, interestingly, was executed in 287 of the Common Era. That's AD, if you happen to be of that persuasion. Sorry, 270 AD or CE, depending on your persuasion. And that was on the 14th of February. And apparently he was a priest who used to marry people in secret, hence his beatification as a saint of love and friendship. Very nice. Thank you very much for that. I had no idea about that. That's great. Thanks a lot. Not related to Cupid then, in the slightest. I'm just going to check my map. We may be on Elephant Plains. Oh, come on, now my map's suddenly not working. This is a disaster. Make it big. Find me. Andrew? Andrew, we're on Elephant Plains. We're not anymore, we're okay. Whew. You see, there are two roads that run along the boundary, so it's very complicated to see. So we've just driven across the fire break. We're back on Arathusa, we're okay now. Phew. And as Geraldine says, she's going to ban me from driving here because I seem to trespass every time I come here. Well, it's not on purpose, Geraldine. I'm learning the new places. Okay. I know exactly where we are now. That's where we had our buffalo yesterday.
That vulture there?
No. Oh, that's brilliant. Andrew spotted a vulture's nest. Why are we trying to get a view of this vulture's nest? Are you sure there's a nest in there?
Yeah, I've seen them there. They poo down the side of the tree.
They poo down the side of the tree. Thank you for that, Andrew. Okay, well, we'll approach with care. Annie in British Columbia, you reckon maybe birds in tropical regions are colourful because there's so much more foliage on the leaves and they therefore have to be more obvious. Annie, I'd say that was a nice theory, but for the fact that there are also more predators. And so coloration does make you slightly more vulnerable to predators. But thank you for that. Keep them coming. We'll get the answer, I promise, at some stage. Andrew, have you got a shot there, or shall I go back a bit? How's that? Raver, you're in Tucson, you reckon it's because most of the time in tropical areas, or there's less time in tropical areas where leaves are on the trees. So where there are more leaves on the trees, birds can afford to be more colourful because they can cover themselves up. I think that's what you're saying. There's the nest of the vulture. The vulture is just above it. That's his. We'll just try. We're going to get a view here, and then I'll try and drive underneath him and see if we can get another view. Now, because the adult is in attendance, I wonder if there isn't a baby or maybe an eggie inside. I'm just going to park Andrew right in the firing line here in the hopes that the vulture gives him a gift. No, that's fine. I'm just going to park here for a while and talk.
No. Long drop.
Right. This is absolutely a long drop. I'm just going to turn around here and then we'll see if we can get a view. We can see much more easily see the nest from this side. We'll just turn around in elephant plains quickly. There we go, that's much better. Let's just stop right here. That's actually quite a nice view. We have the Zooper Zoom with us. So there is a white-backed vulture, one of 5 vulture species here. And all of them, bar one, like to nest in trees. The only one that nests in the cliffs of the Drakensberg is the Cape vulture. Looks very similar to that. Also what we call the griffin vulture, the quintessential sort of white-headed, bald-faced, ominous-looking, hunched-over vulture. There, his nest is just to the left-hand side of him there. Right-hand side, sorry. I don't see any little vulture heads sticking out. Now, I don't know, those of you who are watching in North America, if you could just let me know. Remember, we had the buzzard earlier today, and I've always been under the impression that in North America, you would call you would call a bird like this a buzzard. Is that correct? Whereas we'd call this a vulture, and a buzzard is something else for us. Oh, he's a bit tired there, Andrew. You see that? We had a late night out.
Saturday night, party night.
Saturday night, party night, yes. Possibly an early Valentine's party. I don't know where. He's obviously said something wrong because his Valentine has absconded off to look for some rotting flesh to eat, rather. Just to move along. Not a huge amount in the way of mammal activity around here. We did see a great swathe of damage from the elephants in the area earlier. So thank you, Susie and Diana. You confirmed to me that you would call a bird like that a buzzard and not a vulture. I'm going to check my map again. And in Canada, Janet, you say you would say that was a vulture. So maybe it's an American thing that a bird like that is called a buzzard. And I only know that from cartoons I used to watch as a child. We're still on Arathusa, that's a relief. Trying to find a few tracks to follow, maybe. Jeffrey, in Texas, your theory on the color of birds in tropical regions has got to do with the fact they eat seeds and therefore they could be more colorful. They start to eat seeds in spring and therefore become more colorful. No, I don't think so, Jeffrey, because a lot of the most colorful birds we have are not seed eaters at all. They're insect eaters. So, for example, a bee eater or a sunbird, they're not insect eaters. At least they're not seed eaters. So So, I don't know. I'm trying to... I feel like I've learnt it before and it's gone out of my head. I'm pretty sure there is a good reason for it, though. So I think this is the best, this is probably the best theory so far. Eleanor, you reckon that maybe it's because there is a lot more to eat in a tropical region. And this is maybe what Jeffrey was getting at. And therefore, the maintenance of color and color pigments is possible from an energetic point of view, whereas in higher latitudes, further south or further north, of course, it's much more difficult to find stuff to eat, and so to be wasting energy on making pretty colors is probably not biologically expedient. So I think that's the best theory we've had so far. Thank you, Eleanor. And Jeffrey, I think that's probably what you were getting at. Good. Well, I'm happy to accept that. We'll call that quits. And while we're doing that, let's have a look at that colorful bird there. And there goes the Birchall starling. Beautiful, colorful bird. Does eat some seeds, largely insects though. And of course, to maintain colors like that, very expensive. One bird that doesn't eat a huge amount, of course, is the vulture. And Curtis, you were asking how often they have to eat. Curtis, they don't have to eat very often, but when they do eat, they will eat quite a lot. And that goes, I think, for a lot of the predatory birds. They don't have a very expensive energetic need. You know, they sit up in the air and they just hang there all day long looking about the place. It's not particularly energy intensive, soaring about looking for dead things to eat. And so they don't have, say, the energy needs of a tiny sunbird or a hummingbird, which has to A, maintain body temperature, and B, you know, to hover like they do and flit about trying to find nectar. That's much more energy intensive. We're going through this little drainage line here, which is essentially the boundary. Now, Chris, you're in Oregon, and you are questioning me and saying, what do I mean when I say, we were looking at the buzzard earlier, and I said it's not an eagle because it's, or not a true eagle, because it's not feathered to the bottom of its legs. Well, Chris, the true eagles out here are, feathered to the bottom of their legs. And they come largely from the genus Aquila. And they have feathers all the way down to the bottom of their legs. And you say, well, the bald eagle doesn't have feathers to the bottom of its legs, and it is an eagle. Yes, it is. It's actually a fish eagle. And the fish eagle that we have here is also not a true eagle. Now, that's not just... I think the word is incorrect. So when I say it's not a true eagle, it's not kind of some sort of disparaging casting of aspersions on its eagleness or regalness. But I think it's a kind of biological distinction. So what it means is that they are slightly further or less related to each other than, say, the true eagles would be. So we have snake eagles here, which are not feathered to the bottom of their legs. I'll actually show you some pictures here. And a bald eagle would fit into the same category. So a bald eagle is a fish eagle, as far as I understand it, in much the same way as our fish eagle is, and I think it's actually in the same genus. So if we look at these eagles here, that is sometimes called the Battalier eagle, and indeed it's even described as a distinctive, bulky-looking black eagle, right? And it's got no feathers on the legs, no feathers there on the legs of the black-breasted snake eagle, nor on those of the brown snake eagle. Then we get to what they call true eagles, and it says distinguished from all other raptors by their fully feathered legs. Prey is either killed on impact or by crushing with the powerful talons, and you can see that their legs are covered with feathers. And that's the booted, the lesser spotted, and the Wahlbergs on one page. we've got a number of them here. The long-crested, the Eurasian steppe eagle, the tawny, Ayers hawk, African crowned. Well, there are lots of them. And then we get to the African fish eagle. Now, the African fish eagle, you can see, is not quite feathered to the bottom of its legs. And if I'm not mistaken, it is very much the same genus as the bald eagle is. So it's not, to say that the bald eagle isn't a true eagle would be to possibly cast aspersions on it. Of course, it's an eagle, but it's more distantly related from some of the other eagles by the fact, and you can see that by the fact that it is not feathered down to the bottom of its legs. Okay, so don't worry, the bald eagle is still an eagle. I hope that makes sense. It's just a sort of distinction that we make. Now, Andrew, you will tell me if you think I go off-piste, as it were, again, will you? Or were you just going to film the result? Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you. I'm just trying to, over the last few days, I've been trying to explore bits and pieces of Arathusa that I haven't traveled to before, or haven't spent much time in, so I've become more familiar. I'm losing contact with the final control at the moment because we are so far west. We'll turn back east fairly soon. I think it's a question from Katie in South Bend, and you want to know about bats, and do we get lots of bats here? We do get lots and lots of bats here, Katie. Different species. We get big ones, like the fruit bats, and then we get insect-eating smaller bats, like vesper bats and short-tailed bats or free-tailed bats. But we don't see a great deal of them, obviously, because they're active mostly in the nighttime. We do see them sometimes at dusk. There haven't been many around recently. Again, we keep harping on about this, but it really does affect just about everything out here. Because of the drought, not a lot of insects around, and so these insect-catching bats and fruit-eating bats, which like to eat fruit, which isn't around either, are not very common at the moment, but we do get bats. Bats are notoriously difficult to identify, of course, because they look so similar when you look at them, and some of the ways, sometimes the only way you can distinguish between different kinds of bats is to open their mouths and count the ridges on their palates, if you can believe it. And there are not many people I know who are prepared to get that close to a bat. Seems to be a bit of a hornbill party going on here. I think we'll continue. I don't think they're going to sit still for any length of time. Let's continue. I often wonder what it would be like to see the world through a bird's eyes. Siberia Zumi, you're keeping a bird list, I'm sure, and this will be another one that is probably absent from many of the bird lists around here, and that's a mouse bird. We get two species of mouse bird here. I've probably only seen one, and that is the red-faced mouse bird. Very lovely swizzling, or not swizzling, gentle sort of lilting call as they fly. And they are, oh, there's an elephant. Scrap the mouse bird discussion for 1 second. Andrew, elephant coming this way into Arathusa. Joy and rapture, unforeseen. Some big game at last. But a small version of some big game. There are a whole lot of them in there. That one is not very happy to see us. she's feeding down through this, what we call donga, or drainage line. A donga is another South African word for a gully. And of course the gully will contain a lot more water, easily accessible water for the trees, and so she will be able to monopolize or use that through eating the greener leaves that are along the banks of the donga. I'm pretty sure at this stage that the final control will have absolutely no contact with us at all. So if you are sending through questions and they're not being answered, I'm very sorry about that. Oh, no, there's Jerry. I can hear Jerry's voice 3 out of 5. So she's indicating, you see how she's flapping her right leg up and down there? That is a little indication that she's not particularly happy. She's just kind of feeling possibly a little bit awkward, but I think she's okay. Did you hear that, Andrew? She just gave a very subtle stomach rumble, or it's not a stomach rumble at all, just sounds like that very low infrasonic rumble that they make through the vocal cords. And I'm sure she's communicating with the rest of the herd, which has gone off to the left. Let's watch her for a little while, and then we'll see if we can catch up with the others. Very nice there, she is getting rid of some gas. And we were talking earlier about hindgut fermentation and the fact that zebras don't ever look thin because their hind guts are swollen from the amount of gases that they keep in there, in something called a cecum, which is an enlarged appendix, basically. And that's why they don't look thin when they are nutritionally stressed. Now, a zebra has a similar kind, not a zebra, an elephant has a similar kind of digestive system, but it doesn't seem to be the same swollen belly syndrome that the zebras get. An elephant, when it loses condition, and this one is starting to lose condition a little bit, you can start to see their hips sticking out a bit. She's not in any danger, but I don't think she's perhaps as healthy as she might be. That's simply a function of the fact that she's not eating what she would normally be at this time of the year. I'll move slightly further forward. I don't want to block her ability to get to the rest of the herd. Let's see if we can get a better view. Oh, this is a wonderful view. Is that a right view, Andrew? We have a new viewer called Jan, and Jan, perhaps this is your first elephant sighting with us, and you want to know if that elephant is nearsighted. Can it see us? Jan, we used to think that elephants were relatively nearsighted. I don't think they are. I think their eyes are probably at least as good as ours, which, I mean, I suppose does make them slightly nearsighted if you compare them with a leopard or a lion or a hyena or something like that. But I think their eyes are just as good as ours. The interesting thing I did learn the other day from Steph was that he's seen various videos of people approaching animals on foot. And apparently there is a blind spot that elephants have, pretty much perpendicular to their bodies. So if you approach an elephant from the side very quietly and it happens to be feeding in one direction, it won't see you. So if the wind is right, look at how she's dealing with that tree. It's a little knobthorn tree. Well, it used to be. So if you approach an elephant from the side and it doesn't smell you and it doesn't hear you coming, because both their senses of smell and hearing are very acute, it won't see you. As soon as you go past a certain point, though, back or forward, it will spot you. I thought that was fascinating. I've not tried it myself. I don't think I'm going to, but an interesting one. Let's just see what she is eating there. I think it's a knobthorn. It is a knobthorn tree. Very, very sort of targeted by elephants. Whenever it's dry, they love the knobthorns. Lots of nutrition in the bark and in the twigs, and obviously in the leaves. But there will also be quite a lot of tannin there, so she will probably not finish that tree. She'll move on to another one, because as soon as it starts being attacked, tannins will be released into the leaves. Now she's watching it. She's listening. She's opened out her right ear there, just to filter my voice, the gentle sound of my whispering voice into her ear to find out what I'm saying about her. And she's watching us, but she's completely relaxed, paying almost no attention to us at all. And I suspect she doesn't have a youngster in the herd, otherwise she'd have followed on with them. See how she's selecting specific pieces of the tree? She's not just kind of unselectively molesting the entire thing. She's very selectively picking pieces of the tree. And we watched an elephant yesterday taking pieces off a balanites or torchwood tree. Tiny little pieces. She didn't want the mature leaves. She only wanted the tiny little pieces of very new growth. I think these elephants are very sensitive to whatever chemical compounds there might be within the leaves. And all around us, the kind of later morning sounds are starting to come. The orioles are calling. The drongos are calling a little bit now. The francolins have stopped. And it's starting to warm up. And although we have this blanket of cloud above us, apparently it is, like I say, going to hit 39 to 40 degrees today. And this cloud will burn off. I don't know if you heard that. There's another herd definitely off to the west there. And a youngster shouting, trumpeting away. And you can see she opened her ears to listen to them. Marvelous. I had a question yesterday also about female tusks and whether they are stumpy or... Interesting, she's got classic female tusks, this one. They face downwards. Now, all the way from New Zealand, where Valentine's Day is probably nearly finished, don't you think, Andrew? A long way from here, of course. A long way to the east. Felicity, you're in New Zealand, and you would like to know about whether we plant trees here or not to sort of conserve the bush and help the bush. No, Felicity, we don't do anything like that. It's so massive that it can almost be considered an open system. We let things take their course, and so we don't plant trees here at all. I know that in some areas, were we to perhaps clear an area of bush, you can plant grass sometimes. You can get seed mixes of indigenous grasses, which are quite a good idea for an eroded area. They help to bind the soil together. But we don't do any tree planting. You know, there are no endangered trees here. And were there to be much less bush here and more grass, that would be okay. So we don't worry about that too much. Here comes the elephant. Look how peaceful she is. Completely peaceful. Isn't that amazing? And Andrew and I were just saying yesterday afternoon how you can feel it. You can just pick it up from them. It's very interesting. She's not, I don't think she's lactating. I don't think she has a youngster. She might be pregnant. It's unusual to see a cow like this sort of drifting off the side of the herd, but completely at peace. Oh, very wonderful. Well, as she disappears off, I'm not going to follow her further. Let's head across to Brent Smith, see what he has to find, and I'll probably see you at Arathusa Dam.
So, I found some leopard tracks, finally. I'm just trying to figure out where they go. And it's more than likely shadow in this area. So I'm just checking very carefully at the moment. I need to know if she's gone to the west, which is probably not a good thing for us, or if she's gone to the east, which is a slightly better thing. Still not ideal. Where were that last set of tracks that I saw? The last set of tracks I saw was around here. So basically what I need to do now is try to figure out which way she went. I've checked around the western boundary. I didn't see any tracks crossing, but there have been a huge amount of elephants and buffalo crossing in that area. So I heard sort of a strange noise there for a second. I wasn't sure what it was. It sounded like it could be buffalo rubbing horns. So I just wanted to make sure I wasn't too close to a grumpy buffalo bull. It was just some kudus doing the same. Now, there's been buffalo over here. There's been elephant, which makes tracking very difficult. The last tracks do seem to head off to the east, so we're going to loop around towards Sydney's, and hopefully the tracks come out on the boundary, or hopefully she's still within Juma. They seem to go off here. Female kudu looking very relaxed. So of course it is great wonder. See, there we go. I can show you a nice set of tracks there. You can see the leopard tracks quite clearly there. Pretty much across behind Alex and into the bush here. So while we're tracking a leopard, of course I'm sure there's quite a lot of wonder about Queen Karula, the dominant female leopard for the majority of Juma, at Shadow's mom. She had a kill in the east yesterday. I'm not sure if anyone's gone to check. I haven't heard on the radio if anyone has gone to check yet. But unfortunately, with her current behavior, I think it's possible that those, unfortunately, that cub or cubs that we saw a week or so, 2 weeks ago, maybe just over 2 weeks ago now, are no longer. And that is very common with leopards. As I said, 70 to 75% of the leopard cubs die within the first year of life in the Sabi Sands. And it's more... Sorry, I lost track. My train of thought. I was looking at trucks there for a second, and during that first sort of month to 3 months, it's probably even closer to 80% of that for that period that they do die due to various different things. Sometimes it could be a hyena, it could be lion, it could be leopard, it could have been a snake. But just judging from her behavior at the moment, that we've seen her tracks bombshelling all over the place, that it's very unlikely that those cubs have survived. But fingers crossed, you never know. The wilderness is an incredible place, and I could be completely wrong. But we've all chatted about it, and unfortunately we think that is the most likely scenario. Hello. Are we on our way tracking leopard? We find other things, of course. I think this is the same few giraffe that James was with earlier. And we'll let them continue their breakfast, and hopefully we can add a leopard to our Valentine's breakfast. So, good morning, Daniel. Daniel would like to know what Alex does. What does Alex do if he's not a presenter and he's not on camera normally? Well, to be able to send you this incredible live safari, we need people like Alex that are much smarter than the rest of us. Alex is pulling funny faces at me, and Alex is sort of one of those human computers that can read binary code as it streams across. So he's shaking his head. He's very modest as well. But Alex is one of our tech geniuses. Alex builds, fixes, makes sure the signal gets to where it's got to go. What else do you do, Alex? Alex does that's what Alex does. Yes, and Geraldine in Final Control says he's now the master rower. Alex has bought an exercise, a rowing machine for exercise in camp. No, but Alex is just one of those guys who without being able to send you a live safari twice a day, every day, wouldn't just be possible. And you've got all us presenters who know how to find animals and know fun facts about them. You've got the cameraman who operate the camera to an amazing degree of skill. We've got the lovely ladies in Final Control who do all sorts of things I'm not quite sure about, and also keep us under control. Shh, don't tell them I said that. And then we have our tech crew, who without nothing would be possible. And we're very lucky to be quite a tight-knit little team who get on famously well. Lucy in Indiana is wondering, do we ever get any holiday? We do, Lucy. We work normally, sometimes, a 6-week, 2-week cycle, which means we're on for 6 weeks, 7 days a week, and then we have a 2-week break after that. And Tom would like to know, when are Scott and Nikki back from their break? Scott and Nikki are back today. Around midday, I would guess. Gerald, or Geraldine, we just call her Gerald, is leaving us today. She is heading back to Johannesburg for her break and also to go back to being an AP. So they sit and watch the show in Joburg every day, make sure everything's hunky-dory. And Jamie will be going on leave for a few days, also to see her family in Johannesburg. Two little duikers disappear past us. Now, there seems to be a lot of broken up buffalo herds this morning. Just past the Sydneys, there's a few there in the distance. See if we can. They seem to be scattered all about. I've seen about 3 or 4 different scattered herds, and that probably means they had a difficult evening last night, being chased about by lions. Oh, who else is going? Oh, and Eugene, another one of our tech guys. He's going on his break now. Not much happening at Sydney's today. Oh, I forgot. And Wiem, aka the Wildly Beast, shall be returning today as well. There's no sign of tracks and no sign of that leopard popping out just yet. Just various different general game. And let's go have a look. There were some buffalo close by. Let's go see if we can find them. One of those broken up little scattered portions of a larger herd. Just a hyena. Always pays to double check, triple check, even quadruple check when it comes to leopards. It is really difficult tracking in this area at the moment due to the fact there's so much traffic of elephant and buffalo. Two of them, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a bigger group. Those two look like 2 straggler bulls. General area. I'm going to see if we can catch up with that little herd of buffalo. They might have crossed. Oh, there we are. So, just an update on the rest of the staff movements. Genre. Georgianne is wondering where is Genre. Genre will be back. There we go, there's the buffalo. On the 28th of this month, before he joined us out here at SafariLIVE, he had already agreed to a filming contract in Madagascar. So he will be finishing off filming in Madagascar. I'm sure he's going to have some fantastic stories about his time on one of the most interesting islands in the world. And Georgianne would also like to know where Tebbs is. Georgianne, Tebbs has decided to move along and pursue different career opportunities, and he is also engaged recently, so I think living in the bush far away from his girlfriend is probably not the best thing for him at the moment. But very exciting. We have a new cameraman starting today. His name is David, and he's an old friend of Brian and Andrew's. So very excited to have him joining the team. And also a new AP, or assistant producer, who helps out with the directors. Leanne will also be starting today for the first time in the bush. The buffalo crossing into... Oh, Alex has spotted some zebra down the road. So Steve in Toronto is wondering, do we ever see cheetah in our area as this buffalo cow crosses our western boundary in front of us? Well, Steve, we do. It has been quite a while since we've seen them. They tend to be further to the east and south of us. Sorry, east and north of us, on what we call gabbro soils. Gabbro are clay-based soils, far bigger grasslands, less thick bush, but every now and then we are lucky enough to have a cheetah come visit. The last few stragglers of this buffalo herd are about to cross the road. Southern Gypsy would like to know what my favorite animal is to see out when and about, and it doesn't matter where I am, my favorite animal is the African wild dog. I do love elephant bulls on foot, but I still think African wild dog on foot or on vehicle would by far be my favorite animal. Very, very exciting to watch. Full of beans, so to speak. And we've been having some fantastic wild dog sightings the last week. Just the last 2 days that we haven't had them. I had an update from Tristan from Sibambili. They weren't too far away from this western boundary, but it seems like they've stayed to the west of us rather than heading east. Off the buffalo go. Heading into Simbambili. I will take one last gander in that area where I have those female leopard tracks. Maybe we have a little bit of Valentine's luck to end off this morning's sunrise safari. Sparrow in Ontario is wondering how we're going to celebrate Valentine's Day at Juma. To be honest, I have absolutely no idea. We will be on the Sunset Safari, giving you guys a chance to do some shout-outs, the most inspirational love stories, long-distance love stories. That's the big plan for the Sunset Safari. So you guys can start getting those ready, send them in, and the best ones that are chosen will be read out on tonight's Sunset Safari towards the end of the safari. Not for the whole safari, we'll focus on the animals first. And of course, a Valentine's wish list. Choose which animals you would like us to find. and we will see if we can produce them for your Valentine. So if your Valentine is warthogs, you can say, Brent, James, please find me a warthog to be my Valentine. I've got a feeling she's in here somewhere. So, for example, the wish list we're talking about, I'd like wild dogs to be my Valentine, since my Valentine is heading off on holiday today for a few days. So I'll settle for wild dogs on the Sunset Safari. Much traffic of elephant and buffalo and kudu and impala. I think they've obliterated where those tracks might have gone. Just hanging around in this area hoping to hear an alarm call. Or even better, just spot the leopard. James Taylor would like to know whether we have a bird equivalent to a state bird that is territories stayed within a state. James, I don't think so. We have our national bird, which is the blue crane, but in terms of each province having their own specific bird, not really. There are provinces that where they have endemic species that will only occur in that province, but generally not. We have certain of the provinces are equated to animals. So my home province and all the sporting teams I support come from KwaZulu-Natal, and the KwaZulu-Natal sporting emblem is a black wildebeest, but their rugby team is known as the Sharks, the Natal Sharks, and their cricket team is known as the Natal Dolphins because they're on the coast. Johannesburg is known as the Lions, Pretoria the Blue Bulls, Eastern Province is the Eastern EP Elephants. The cheetahs are from the Free State, from the centre of the country. Northwest pumas, which obviously makes no sense because we have no pumas in Africa. I'm trying to think what else, and I think I'm forgetting one or two. The Western Cape is the Stormers, or the Cape of Storms. But not really an animal, that. Probably behaves far more wild than any animals, those storms that come off the Atlantic Ocean and from Antarctica. I used to play, I've played for many rugby teams over the years, but some of the more memorable names is I played for the Mound Wild Dogs in Botswana, and when I was in Tanzania, I played for the Dar es Salaam Leopards and the Tanzanian Twigas, the Tanzanian Giraffes. Wendy in New York would like to know if I've wrangled any more snakes out of our living quarters. We actually haven't had a snake in and around the house for a while. Now, probably, Wendy, because you've mentioned it, I'm going to have to go probably catch a snake straight after drive. But I think the last one was a little house snake that was removed by Scott from the DRC. But we haven't had to catch any snakes for a couple of weeks, or a week or 2 weeks now. Even longer, maybe. I'm going to slowly make my way back down towards quarantine. No more luck around that area where the tracks were. I think she might have crossed east, but we couldn't see the tracks due to all the elephant activity. And I'm hoping to bump into some more elephants before the end of the safari, either around the Juma waterhole or the Gallagher waterhole. A very excellent question from Mark, who's on Twitter. Would like to know, why is quarantine called quarantine? Well, it was originally an area used to quarantine domestic livestock, in particular cattle. This area was all cattle farms, or was gazetted as cattle farms. And they found out very quickly that this was not a good place to keep cows, as the lions decimated them very quickly. Also, at that time, lots of tick-borne diseases also affected the cattle. So it quickly stopped becoming a cattle farming area and became more of a hunting area. So a lot of the farmers here used to use this as their holiday area to come hunt. But that stopped in the 60s. So this whole huge area, actually the majority of the Sabi Sands, was owned by very few individuals. Most of them were from the KwaZulu-Natal sugarcane fraternity and the Transvaal Consolidated Farms, which they own. And they used to use this as their winter hunting ground. And amazing how things have changed so much. So even some famous people came hunting in the Sabi Sands. And there's quite a famous story about Princess Alice. Now, I think that was around the 40s, 50s, I'm not 100% sure. But Princess Alice from Great Britain was said to be a really, really incredibly strong woman, fierce and very brave. And she had come out to hunt lion. And accompanying her was Harry Kirkman, the first warden of the Sabi Sands. And they set off after hunting the lion. The first shot hit the lion hard but didn't kill it, and the lion ran off into the bush. And Harry Kirkman, trying to be gentlemanly, proceeded to fire a round off at the lion as it was disappearing. Princess Alice proceeded to smack him over the head and said, "My dear boy, you shall not be going anywhere after my lion. It is my lion." And then this tiny, petite little English rose marched off into the thicket with a large caliber rifle and shot that lion. And that was obviously in the days where hunting was far more accepted. It's not the thing, it's not so good now, but and quite a very funny thing. And as a guide, when you first used to start working down in the south, that particular area is between the boundary between Londolozi and Mala Mala, and it's referred to as Princess Alice's Bush. And that obviously gets quite a few rises out of a lot of the guests when you're sitting there on the radio and you pick up your game drive radio stations. I've located a female leopard in Princess Alice's Bush. And so that's always a slightly strange one. But there's a lot of funny little history and stories from around the Sabi Sands. And I've been doing quite some in-depth research into it, so I've got quite a few others to share with you over the coming year. Absolutely nothing on the quarantine clearings at the moment. Let's have a look down towards the waterhole, maybe have a little more joy. we make our way towards the waterhole, James has got another apex avian predator.
A martial eagle. Magnificent, enormous eagle here, and by far the largest that we find in this area. And it will be looking, scanning the area for its favorite food, which is, interestingly enough, tree monitors, rock monitors or tree monitor lizards, huge lizards. That's what he likes to eat the most, but he will take small impala, domestic dogs on the odd occasion. So were you to have a small dachshund in this area, you'd want to keep it under wraps right now, and basically anything else it can catch. Now, the martial eagle probably stands 3.5 feet tall, so although it doesn't look that big there, that's how big it is. An enormous wingspan of well over probably 7 or 8 feet. Huge, huge bird. Talons that can crush the back end of an animal's skull. Incredibly powerful tarsal muscles to allow it to do that. And just the most beautiful bird. Not very common because they are territorial, and a pair will have a territory, I think, of up to 150 square kilometers. That's 1,500, at least 15,000 hectares, which in acres is about 60,000 acres. No, it's not, that's absolute nonsense. It's about 35,000 acres. That'll be the territory size of a martial eagle. I do wish he'd take the time and deign to look at us so that we might see his very fearsome face. A sharp and fearsome face they have. There, you can see that bill. That beak is quite something. So even though he's 3.5 to 4 feet tall, well, I mean, 4 feet's probably a bit much, but sort of 3.5 feet. They're very light. They probably only weigh in the region of 10 kilograms or 22 pounds. And that's because their bones are hollow for the most part. And that helps them to soar off into the sky with minimal effort. What a spectacular bird. And just a final question from James Taylor. You want to know what the wingspan of the martial eagle is. As far as I'm aware, James Taylor, the wingspan of the martial eagle is about 8 feet. I'm going to very, very quickly check it for you, see how fast I can find the thing. And if I can't find it within the next 3 seconds, I'm going to hand you over to Brent. Marshall, where are you? Marshall, 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 Marshall. No, I can't find the flipping bird for some reason. I will find it eventually. But James Taylor, I think probably about 8 feet, maybe even more. That's just over 2 meters, of course, which is vast. There he is. Hang on, here we go. We'll get him now. We'll get him now. We'll get him now. We'll get him now. 6 to 8 feet. There we go. Thank you. Very nice. 6 to 8 feet. Good. Right, everybody. That's it from us today. Thank you very much for attending us on this Valentine's morning. Thank you, Andrew. You're possibly not the first person I'd have chosen to spend Valentine's Day, but you know, it was a pleasant diversion. Thank you to Jerry. Have a nice time in Johannesburg, Jerry. We'll see you this afternoon after you've said goodbye to Brent. Bye-bye.
So, as we reach the end of this sunrise safari, we decided to stop in with the pond hippo, and he looks quite content. But don't forget to join us for the Valentine's Drive on the Sunset Safari. Goodbye. first ever